So now we're beginning Canto 7, text number 1. Huh? Oh, okay, sorry, 6th chapter. Not quite the beginning. Okay, this chapter is called Prahlad Instructs His Demoniac Schoolmates. And I hope you can see the verse. Please repeat after me, line by line. Sri Parada Uvacha Kaumara Acharit Pragyo Dharman Bhagavatan Iha Dulabam Manusham Janma Toddapi Adruvam Artadam Sri Parada.
Je dostatečně inteligentní, by měl od samého začátku života, tedy od útlého dětství, používat lidské tělo k podané službě a zříci se veškerého jiného zaměstnání. Získat lidské tělo je velmi vzácné, a přestože je dočasné jako jiná těla má svůj význam, ani v lidském životě lze vykonávat podanou službu. Dokonce i malé množství upřímné oddané služby může zajistit živé bytosti naprostou dokonalost. Význam. Účelem védské civilizace a čtení véd je dosáhnout v lidské podobě dokonalé oddané služby. Védský systém proto od samého začátku života zavádí brahmačáry. Člověk se tak již od dětství od 5 let učí uspůsobovat své činnosti tak, aby byl dokonale zaměstnaný oddanou službou. Bhagavad Gita 2.40 stojí Svalpamnatyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. Malý pokrok na této cestě může každého ochránit před tím nejrůznějším nebezpečím. Moderní civilizace na výroky védské literatury nehledí a je k lidem nesmírně krutá, místo aby učila děti stát se brahmačárymi, učí matky pod záminkou omezení růstu populace zabíjet své děti ještě v lůně. Pokud se dítě náhodou zachrání, je vychováváno pouze ke smyslovému požitku. Na celém světě se lidé postupně přestávají zajímat o dokonalost života, žijí jako kočky a psy a maří svůj lidský život tak, že se připravují k dalšímu převtělení do nižších druhů z celkových 8 400 000. Hnutí pro vědomí Krišny vyvíjí usilovnou snahu sloužit společnosti, takže učí lidi o dané službě. To je může zachránit před další degradací na zvířecí úroveň. Prahlad Maharaj již uvedl, že Bhagavata dharma znamená Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Parasyam Arčanam Vandanam Vylasyam Satyamátmam Vedanam. Všechny děti a mladé lidi na všech základních, středních a vysokých školách i doma je třeba učit naslouchat to nejvyšší osobnosti božství. To znamená, že by se měli učit naslouchat pokynům Bhagavata, uvádět to do svého života a dosáhnout tak toho, že budou silní v podané službě a nebudou se muset bát degradace do zvířecí podoby. Následování Bhagavata dharmy je v tomto věku kalina učeně usnadněné. Šástra uvádí Hare Nama,
Náme kevalam kalau nasteva gatiranyata.
Je třeba jen zpívat Hare Krishna Mahamantru. Všichni, kdo tak učiní, budou znitra svého srdce zcela očištění a zachránění lidskou oběhu zrození na smrti.
Sri Prahlad Uvacha Kumara Acharit Pragyo Dharmam Bhagavatan Iha Durlabham Manusham Janma Tad Api Adruvam Artadam.
Maharaj řekl, ten, kdo je dostatečně inteligentní, by měl od samého začátku života, tedy od útlého dětství, používat lidské tělo po dané službě. Zříci se veškerého jiného zaměstnání. Získat lidské tělo je velmi vzácné. Přestože je dočasné jako jiná těla má svůj význam, ale v lidském životě lze vykonávat podanou službu. Dokonce i malé množství upřímné oddané služby může zajistit živé bytosti na prostou dokonalost.
Mukam kroti bachalam bangam langayate grimyat kripidram mandeshi gurundina taranam paramananda madhavam. So, dulabham manushama janma. For the living entity to attain this human form is durlabha. It is accomplished with after great difficulty. We can just think of it this way, that there are so many lower forms of life in comparison to the human form. How many trees are standing out there? In one forest, there are thousands and millions of trees.
V jednom lese jsou tisíce a miliony z toho.
And how many human beings are here?
Kolik je tady lidských bytostí.
You see? So we are surrounded by so many trees,
Kolem nás je tolik stromů.
so many birds in the trees,
Tolik ptáků na těch stromech.
so many insects crawling here and there.
Tolik různých brouků, které jsou tam leze.
And go down to microscopic level, so many germs.
Jdeme na mikroskopickou úroveň, tak je tolik bakterií.
So we are vastly outnumbered by lower forms of life.
Takže ty nižší formy života nás počtu velice předčí.
That means there are very few opportunities for living entities in lower forms to enter the human form.
Znamená, že je velice málo příležitostí pro bytosti v nižších formách vstoupit do lidské formy.
Long waiting list.
Je to dlouhá čekací listina.
Like in your country in the communist times, when someone wanted to buy a car or rent an apartment or something like that, they sometimes had to wait 20 years. Long waiting list.
Ve vaší zemi v komunistických časech, když si někdo chtěl koupit auto nebo pronajmout byt, tak někdy musel čekat mnoho let, prostě byl masivní.
So, durlabam manusham janma. After long difficulty, finally a living entity who has been rotating through lower forms can enter the human form.
Takže po dlouhých těžkostech může živá bytost, která byla v nižších formách života,
So
vstoupit do lidské.
tad api adruvam artadam. In one sense, this human form is no different from any other form
V jednom smyslu se lidská forma neliší od jiných form,
because it is adruva, which means it is not eternal.
protože je adruva, které není věčné.
As the dog or cat undergoes birth, death, disease, old age, so also does the human form.
Stejně jako psi a kočky podstupují zrození, stáří, nemoc a smrt, tak i lidé.
But artadam. So Prabhupada has translated this, full of meaning.
Ale potom je artadam, to znamená plné významu.
Arta means meaning and arta also means value.
Arta znamená význam a také hodnota.
So the human body is full of great meaning and great value.
Takže lidské tělo má velký význam a velkou hodnotu.
Although it is a material body.
Přestože to hmotné tělo.
Because this human body, as explained elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is moksha dwara. You may know what this means just from hearing it. Moksha, liberation. Dwara means door.
Takže jak je na jiném místě v Bhagavatamu vysvětleno lidské tělo je také moksha dvára, což můžete pochopit, co znamená, je moksha je osvobození dvára dveře.
The cat body, dog body, hog body, this is not moksha dwara.
Kočičí, psí nebo prasečí tělo, to není moksha dvára.
They are also material bodies like this human body.
Jsou to také hmotná těla jako lidské tělo.
But this human body, although material, is a great opportunity if the body is used correctly.
Ale toto lidské tělo, i když je hmotné, tak poskytuje velkou příležitost, pokud se používá správně.
If the body is misused, then what is it? It is tamo dwaram. It is the gateway down.
Pokud se tohle tělo zneužije, tak je to tamodvára, neboli brána dolů.
So both options are there.
Obě možnosti jsou tady.
To go upward and out of this material existence altogether.
Jít nahoru, ven úplně z té hmotné existence.
If this body is used according to Krishna's plan.
Pokud se tohle tělo používá podle Krishnova plánu.
And so therefore we have to understand what is the Lord's plan for this body.
Musíme vědět, jaký je Pánův plán pro toto tělo.
And that is actually the subject matter of this verse.
To je námět právě tohoto verše.
Famous verse spoken by Sri Prahlad Maharaj.
To je slavný verš, který vyslovil Sri Prahlad Maharaj.
So what is the purpose of this body? Dharman bhagavatan iha. That one should take up occupational duties, dharma, which are in devotional relationship to the Supreme Lord.
Co je účelem tohoto těla, je, že má přijmout povinnosti, co se týče svých činností, to znamená dharmu, která je ve vztahu k nejvyššímu pánu.
That's called Bhagavad Dharma.
To se říká Bhagavad Dharma.
Not that our occupational activity should be in defiance of Krishna,
Že by naše zaměstnání mělo popírat Krishnu.
which is unfortunately the general state of affairs in the world today.
Což je bohužel všeobecný stav současného světa.
That people live their lives without any reference to the instructions of the Lord.
Lidé žijí svůj život úplně bez jakéhokoliv vztahu k pokynu Pána.
And so they become worse than animals.
Kvůli tomu jsou horší než zvířata.
How is it that a human being is worse than an animal if he is sinful?
Může být lidská bytost horší než zvíře, pokud je hříšná.
And the answer is that animals are at least restricted very much by material nature. They have no independence.
Odpověď je, že zvířata jsou alespoň velice omezená hmotnou přírodou, nemají žádnou nezávislost.
You see. So even the very dangerous animals, there is a natural reason why they will attack and kill.
Velice nebezpečná zvířata mají přirozený důvod, proč útočit a zabíjet.
You see, a tiger will attack and kill. Why? Because it's hungry.
Tygr útočí a zabíjí, protože má hlad.
And after it eats its fill, then it will just lay around for a couple weeks.
A jakmile má břicho nacpané, tak bude jenom pár týdnů ležet.
And then finally get up and go out and hunt again.
Potom nakonec vstane a zase bude lovit.
So a tiger is a killer, but he's not a crazy killer
Tygr je zabíječ, ale ne šílený zabíječ.
who destroys 100,000 people with the press of a button.
Který zahubí stovky a tisíce lidí tím, že zmáčkne nějaký čudí.
This is what happens when a human being goes through this tamodwara, this doorway downward.
Když se stane lidská bytost skrze tuto tamodvára cestu dolů,
Then he uses his good brain and his independence, because human being is somewhat independent. He uses it all for mischief, all for rascaldom.
pak svůj dobrý mozek a nezávislost, protože lidská bytost má nějakou nezávislost, používá jenom darebáctví.
And thus he creates havoc.
Tím vytváří chaos.
So this is the state of affairs in our present age called Kali Yuga.
Takže tak se věci mají v současném věku Kali.
So the opposite to this is Bhagavad Dharma,
A pak to je Bhagavad Dharma.
when the human occupations are in accordance with the instructions of Krishna.
Kdy jsou lidská zaměstnání v souladu s pokynem Krishny.
So finally, Sri Prahlad Maharaj, actually not finally, it's in the beginning. I've been explaining this verse from back to front. So this is so important that the human being take up Bhagavad Dharma that Prahlad Maharaj says it should be started from an early age, Komara, which means 5 years old.
Na začátku toho ještě Prahlad Maharaj říká, je tak důležité vykonávat tu Bhagavad Dharmu, že by to měl člověk dělat už od věku Kaumára, když je 5 let.
At 5 years old, a child should begin his training in Bhagavad Dharma by going to Gurukul.
5leté dítě už by mělo dostávat trénink v Bhagavad Dharmě, do Gurukulu.
That is how important this is, that we use this life properly.
Tolik je důležité, abychom využili správně tento život.
Because this nature, material nature, is so strong.
Protože hmotná příroda je velice silná.
Even Srila Prabhupada, in discussing his own childhood,
Šla Prabhupada, když mluvil o svém vlastním dětství,
he said that my nature was I simply wanted to play.
tak říkal, já jsem měl takovou povahu, jsem si chtěl jenom hrát.
And he said that his father was very indulgent of his son. His father liked to pamper Srila Prabhupada. So his father was not inclined to force his son to go to school. And it would happen that instead of going to school, little Abhay Charan would just play. And when his mother would find this out, she would become very angry. And she would say to her husband, "Your son did not go to school today." And Gaur Mohan De, Srila Prabhupada's father, would say, well, and he would say to little Abhay, "So you'll go to school tomorrow?" And Abhay would say, "Yes, father." And then he would turn to his wife and say, "See, he'll go tomorrow." But Prabhupada admitted, when he was talking about this, he said, "But if it was left between myself and my father, the day that I would go to school would never come." So therefore, his mother, she hired one man who held the position of Yamadhar. So Yama, just like the name Yamaraj, Yama means to regulate. Dhara means to carry or to have the authority. So this man was given the authority over little Abhay Charan to make sure that he would go to school. Mm-hmm. So you can see how strong this nature is. Mm-hmm. That even an innocent child, in one sense we say child is innocent. He has no intentional bad purpose. But still, he wants to follow the way of nature. He just wants to play. And in this way waste his life. And it's very interesting that Prahlad Maharaj, who is speaking this verse, is himself only about 5 years old. He is saying this nonsense has to stop. So this is why he's considered one of the Mahabhagavatas, because he's preaching like this at such an early age. Yes. So nature is very strong. Mm-hmm. You cannot step outside of your nature just at will. One has to be purified. Like there's a story of a master in olden times in India, and he was keeping one slave who was supposed to be doing all the household chores, all the work in the home. So one day, this slave escaped. He ran away. So a few days later, the master was walking on the city street. This was in Old Delhi at the time of Maharaj Akbar the Great. So this wealthy man was walking down the city street. There are many people going to and fro. And he happened to see in the crowd, here's my slave. He's just loitering. So the slave saw the master also at the same time. So they were both just for a second frozen, looking at one another. But it was the slave who acted first. The slave stepped up to the master and grabbed him by the arm. He said in a loud voice, "You rascal! You ran away from me. I've been looking for you. You were a slave in my house, and you escaped. Now I've got you, and I'll take you back and put you to work." So the master was astonished. And he began to protest. No, you're the slave. So in the meantime, people were gathering around. What is this? And no one could understand who is master, who is slave. And the slave was very encouraged by this. He thought, if I keep up this act, then it may be that I will take over my master's house and he'll have to serve me. Ha ha. I just have to keep acting in this way and people will believe me. So the soldiers of the king came, the police, and they brought this pair before the king, Akbar. And both of them made their presentation. But the slave was so convincing that the king couldn't decide who to believe. But Akbar, he had a very intelligent minister named Birbal. So he asked Birbal, what should we do? And Birbal said, this is what we do. So he had the both of them go to one ground floor window in the king's palace. And without them knowing it, outside the window, standing outside to one side where they couldn't see, there was a soldier with a big sword. So Birbal told the both of them, now both of you at the same time, I want you to stick your heads out the window and have a look what's outside. So they both did that, stretching their necks out. And then Birbal shouted to the man with the sword, "Cut off the slave's head!" So both of them looked and they saw this soldier there with the sword like this, ready to bring it down. And the slave pulled his head in. The master didn't, because he had heard, cut the head off the slave. So the master, he didn't think to pull his head back, but the slave did. And thus his nature exposed himself. So you cannot overcome nature just by an act. It requires training, it requires purification. And this is why Sri Prahlad Maharaj says it should start at Komara, at the early age of 5 years old. So Srila Prabhupada told a story which he said may be a fact. About a young boy who was raised by an aunt. And the aunt was very indulgent. So from an early age, she would just let the boy do whatever he wanted to do. So one thing led to another. Like I said, in the very beginning, child will just play, waste time. But gradually, that child is going to fall into bad company and develop bad habits. So this is what happened to that boy. His aunt just let him do what he wanted, so he fell together with some rough boys. And they began stealing. And as they got older, then they started to do worse crimes. And finally, when he was still young, just a young man, he was finally arrested for having committed murder. And he was convicted and sentenced to die by hanging. So when he was to be hung, they brought him on this wooden platform where the rope is. Then his aunt was there, and she was crying. Oh, my poor nephew, this is so terrible. So she was weeping. And the boy, because they always give last request to a condemned prisoner, so the boy requested the authorities, let my aunt come here, close to me. And they were thinking, oh yes, she's crying for him, he wants to say something to her, kiss her, goodbye, something like that. So they brought her close, and he leaned over as if to kiss her on this cheek. But instead he bit her ear off. And of course she was shocked and screaming and holding her ear. And why did you do this? You were just like my own son. How could you do this? And he said, I am repaying you for what you did to me. I'm being hung today. Why? Because you did not take proper care. You, out of your so-called love, irresponsible love, you let me do whatever I wanted. And now this is my fate. Yes. So, little children, again, they seem to be so innocent. But they have been in this material world for countless births, like everyone else. And so they are bringing with them a multitude of papa bija, sinful desire seeds. So, a seed, when you plant it in the ground, it does not grow up immediately. And so it is with children. They have all kinds of sinful desire seeds in the heart. But they don't start to grow when they're 5 years old. First they develop a bit. A few years have to go by. And then, especially when they reach age 11, 12, 13, when the sex hormones start to flow in the blood,
Zvlášť, když rostou do věku 11, 12, 13 let, v krvi začnou ty sexuální hormony.
Then all these inner desires start to come out.
Všechny ty vnitřní touhy se začínají projevovat.
So Bhagavatam speaks of these desires very, very clearly, points to them very, very clearly. That loke, the verse in the 11th canto, begins with the word loke, which means in all conditioned souls. Loke, vyavaya. So vyavaya means the sexual desire. And then amisha. Amisha means the propensity to eat meat. Madhya seva means the propensity to take intoxication. Nityastu jantur. Nahi tatra chodana. So jantu means the living entity. Nityasya. It is always there. These desires for sex life, for meat eating, for intoxication are always there, deep in the heart of the living entity. So if something is not done to check these desires, at an early age, then when the ripe time comes, these desires will come bursting out. So this is again why Sri Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Kumaram acharit pragyo, it should start young. The idea of this spiritual training from a young age is actually to locate these seeds before they come out. And to fry them. You see, like when you make a chons, spicing, sabji. These are seeds. When you are holding the seeds in the palm of your hand, these seeds could be planted in the ground and they would grow. But as soon as you throw them in the hot pan, in the smoking ghee, then they sizzle and this aromatic smoke comes up and they turn brown, so then they'll never grow. Yes. So this is actually the idea of this spiritual training in Bhagavad Dharma. To arrest the development of these sinful desire seeds. So that when this person is a young man, young woman, they will be sattvic devotees of the Lord. Their dharma, their occupation will be Bhagavad Dharma. Actually, when I was quite new devotee, 1972, September, Srila Prabhupada gave a series of lectures in New Vrindavan. I was there. And these were called the Bhagavad Dharma Discourses. So Srila Prabhupada was explaining in these lectures that in Bhagavad Dharma, you see, the occupations, all the occupations that will be seen in Varna Ashram, they're there.
Varnášrama dharmy tam jsou.
So Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, they're all there.
Jsou tam brahmany, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra.
And brahmacharis, grihastas, vanaprasthas, sannyasis, they're all there.
Jsou tam brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi.
But the specialty of Bhagavad Dharma is that the motivation, the striving, you see, in people in their occupation, they strive for some goal. So in Bhagavad Dharma, the goal that is strived for is Krishna consciousness.
Zvláštností Bhagavad Dharmy je, že to motivací nebo cílem, o který lidé usilují, je dosáhnout vědomí Krishna.
In material life, even in the ordinary Varna Ashram Dharma, what is the goal? What is the inspiration? It's sense gratification. In the ordinary Varna Ashram Dharma then, the sense gratification is regulated. And that is very beneficial. But that will not actually uproot the seeds of sinful desire. They will still be there. So, sooner or later, they will cause trouble. That's why in ordinary Varna Ashram Dharma, this prayashchitta is very prominent. Prayashchitta means atonement for sin. And the caste brahmanas, the brahmanas who supervise the ordinary Varnashram Dharma, they make their livelihood from prayashchitta. The people are not able to restrain themselves from sinful activities, but at least they know from Shastra that it's bad, and they feel guilty. So then they go to the Brahmana and they confess their sins. And then the Brahmana, actually it was, I don't quite remember now if it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But one or the other of these great acharyas, he was describing this process and kind of humorously pointing out what goes on. That so a man comes to his village Brahmana and says to the Brahmana that, oh, today I did a bad thing. I killed a spider. So the Brahmana goes, oh, sinful activity, very bad. And then he looks up in some old book and then gives the prayashchitta. That you have to feed my family, me and my family, for the next fortnight, the next 2 weeks. And that will relieve you of your sin. But then this man, he says, because he's actually catching the Brahmana in a trap. He's a clever man, so he says, oh, I see. But I also know that yesterday your own son killed a spider. And I don't see him doing any prayashchitta like this. And the Brahmana goes, oh, and then that was the wrong page, sorry. Oh, yeah, all you have to do is light one incense to Mother Durga, and that will take care of it. So these caste brahmanas, this is their livelihood. People don't know how to control their senses. Because the goal of their life is sense gratification. Yeah, so sense gratification means pouring ghee on the fire of lust. And so the fire is going to get bigger and bigger. And they can't control it. But again, because they're in a Vedic culture, they know it's bad. They feel very guilty. So they go running to the Brahmana. And then he exploits them. He squeezes them for money. So this whole thing is just an arrangement of material nature. If one is sinful, then one has to be punished. So there's no final solution to the problem of sinful desire in such a culture. And we're speaking still of Vedic culture, materialistic Vedic culture. So if there's no solution to the problem of sinful desire in even that culture, then what to speak of this Kali Yuga, totally unrestrained type of culture. So now the philosophy is that yes, we've had so much bad experience with trying to restrain our desires. This creates psychological problems. So now we think we should just let everyone do what they want. And even if they're little children, just let them do what they like. And then they won't have these, you see, complexes in the mind. But as soon as everything is allowed, then all whatever humanity was there is lost. And then it is a very difficult situation. You see? Because as I said before, such human beings, it's not that they become animals, they become worse than animals. And we cannot speak anymore of any culture. It's just insanity. So we can see much of modern life is like that now. And nobody knows what to do. You see? There's no solution. Except for Krishna consciousness. That's why Srila Prabhupada was so firm on this point. That apart from Krishna consciousness, there is no welfare movement for the human beings of this age. Because you can look, you can practically see that there is no movement, there is no religion, there is no process that can actually change the heart. That it actually can uproot the sinful desires that are implanted deep in our subconsciousness, which have been there for millions of births. So this is so important. And now those of you who are beginning this Krishna consciousness at a later age, I don't see too many sitting here who are 5 years old. So you're starting maybe age 15, 18, 20, like that. So it's extremely important for you to understand this, first of all. What is the special benediction of Krishna consciousness. And it is extremely important to seriously put this Krishna consciousness into practice. Because we have all lost so much valuable time. And these sinful propensities have grown up. They're no longer just seeds. They are thick creepers which have grown out and wrapped themselves around us in so many ways, around our minds and around our bodies. They wrap around us and they hold us fast. This is conditioning. This is habit. So, habits are, again, this is something that without Krishna consciousness cannot really be changed. The most people can do is they can shuffle their habits. They can exchange one for another. They can quit smoking and chew gum instead. You see? But they have to have an outlet for the sense gratification. You see? So materialists trying to change their habits, it's like those funny shaped balloons. They have at circus. You can buy maybe a balloon in the shape of a dog's head or something. With a big nose, you see, and some ears. So, if you try to push the nose in, and I want to have a round balloon, I don't like this crazy shape. Well, let me just push the nose in and push the ears in. What happens? You push in this side but out that side. The shape is reforming. So this is the most people can do. It's called shifting the burden. Srila Prabhupada gave the example of someone carrying a burden, a heavy load, first on their head. They go a long way and gradually it's paining the head. So they bring the burden down on the shoulder. And the shoulder becomes pained. So then to the other shoulder. And then carry it in the arms. And then back up on the head. You see? Shifting the burden, but it doesn't make the burden any lighter. In illusion we think, oh, now it's easier, it's on this shoulder. No, it's the same weight. It's the same load. You don't lighten the load until you put this thing down. But in materialistic consciousness, it is not possible. Prahlad Maharaj speaks about this in another well-known verse. He speaks of the bharam. Bharam means heavy burden. Of what? Maya sukha. Of illusory sense pleasure. So everyone who is dedicated to sense gratification is forced by material nature to carry a heavy burden. And how will we put it down? And that again is why there is Krishna consciousness. So as I said, those who are older have already started to carry this burden. We've already begun to develop bad habits. The conditioning of this life has already started. So what can we do? We have to work extra hard to break this conditioning. So what can we do then? This should be a question that everyone must consider. What can we do to ensure success in this lifetime? So Srila Prabhupada said, surrender to Krishna completely. Well, now that sounds nice, but there is a kind of condition attached to that. Srila Prabhupada said that it's not possible to surrender to Krishna unless one has transcendental knowledge. Because if you do not have transcendental knowledge, then you don't know what you're surrendering to. You see, in material consciousness, kalpana, imagination, is very prominent. This whole Kali Yuga culture is going on by kalpana, mental speculation. Actually, in 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is explained that everything starts from this mental speculation. Prajahati manasas kaman, that the ideas for sense gratification, they start, of course, in the mind. And then, Prabhupada explained this, then they lead actually to, these ideas lead us to engagement in sense gratification. And this is how we acquire body after body. So in a sense, you see, just like in the Christian doctrine, the Catholic doctrine, they have this concept of original sin. Of course, it's not easy to understand their doctrine of original sin. Because the original sin was not done by us, it was done by someone else, Adam and Eve. But we have to suffer for what Adam and Eve did. But in Krishna consciousness, there's also, in a sense, an original sin. And that we have all done in the very beginning of our material existence. And that original sin is mental speculation. And Prabhupada explained it very clearly in Bhagavad Gita lecture, 1966. It's when we act on our own desires. It's when we look, well, I have this body, I have these senses. So what can I do? Well, let me think. And we invent some plan for ourselves. This starts the whole material entanglement. So Srila Prabhupada said, we have to learn to not act under the sway of the mind, of mental speculation. We have to act under spiritual guidance. And therefore there is Shastra, Sadhu, Guru. Srila Prabhupada always said, it's like three triangular, you see, corners, and we have to be in the middle of that. This is the safe ground for us. If everything that we do is authorized by Shastra Sadhu Guru, then we are acting under a spiritual impulse. But if our activities are impelled by our own minds, mental speculation, that is material impulse. And for that we get karma. Mm-hmm. So this is why there must be transcendental knowledge. Because without knowledge, then we take the nonsense of the mind to be knowledge. We hear you should surrender to Krishna. But what is this Krishna? You see? For, in India, there is this religion based on the Vedas, Hinduism. There are 700 million Hindus. How many of these 700 million Hindus do you think really knows anything about Krishna? The average Hindu thinks that Krishna was an ordinary man. All right, not quite ordinary, he was extraordinary. But he was a man. Yeah, he took birth. He had a material body. He may have been a great mystic, a great man of knowledge, spoke Bhagavad Gita, did wonderful things. He may have been a manifestation of the impersonal Brahman. And therefore he's, yes, very great, Jai Sri Krishna and all of that. But if most Hindus have this idea, that means they don't know what is Krishna. And these ideas I just told you about, they are kalpana, they are imagination. So yes, surrender to Krishna. But if your understanding of Krishna is just kalpana, imagination, how can you surrender to Krishna? So therefore we see today the big so-called Babas, incarnations with big hair. They're coming and saying, I am Krishna. Surrender to me. I'm here, never fear. And they take all the money and they do their leelas. And these foolish people are satisfied. Because Krishna, he was just a man ultimately. And Guruji, he's just a man. So in this way, cheaters and cheated. So therefore Srila Prabhupada writes in a Bhagavatam purport that in order to surrender to Krishna completely, one must have transcendental knowledge. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate Vasudeva savamiti sa mahatma sadurlabha. One who knows who actually is Krishna, Vasudev, that person is very rare. Bahunam janmanamante. This can take many, many births to come to such platform of knowledge. Or you can do it in this life. We may not have ourselves much realized transcendental knowledge. But as I said, Shastra, Sadhu, Guru are there. So we must learn to surrender to these three. Triune means three in one. Three in one authorities for transcendental knowledge. In this way become servants of that transcendental knowledge. Completely surrendered servants of Shastra, Sadhu, Guru. Then we are living in transcendental knowledge, even though we may not have realized very much of it at this stage. And again, the real test is this mind. Are we master of the mind and the senses, or are we servant of the mind and the senses? That is the test. So I'm going to be speaking in my seminar here in these 5 days on this very subject matter. What the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and other Shastras have to tell us about the mind. What the mind is, what it does good and what it does bad. And how we can actually become Goswami or master of the mind. The mind is the leader of the senses, therefore the mind is also considered a sense, but it is the leader of the senses. So this is extremely important, because if we gain this knowledge, then we can surrender to Krishna. And we can make this life perfect. If we are alasha, siddha alasha, this is a statement used by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That means if we're lazy in this knowledge, in this understanding. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says one cannot overcome one's nature then. Our position is like that of the slave. We may act like devotee, stick our head out the window as if, everything's okay. I'm the master here. But then when we hear, cut off the head of the slave, pull the head back involuntarily. So, only one who is not lazy about this subject matter, transcendental knowledge, he can overcome his nature and thus really surrender to Krishna. So actually we should have started this study at a very early age. But still, the brain is there. It hasn't yet turned into a cloud of marijuana smoke inside of our skull. There's still a working brain. So we should energetically use this brain now to understand tattva, to put it into practice. And especially, you see, everything is centered, as Prabhupada concludes his purport, on Harinam. So we want to All of this is meant to help us simply to chant the holy Krishna, the holy name, the Hare Krishna mantra, offenselessly. Offensive chanting simply means that our mind and our senses are somehow in the way. You examine all of the 10 offenses and you see that common thread. That the mental speculation or the sense gratification is still interfering as one chants. So then it's called aparad. So that is why we need this tattva in order to overcome mind and senses. Pacify them completely. This way, come rapidly to the pure stage of chanting. Then Prabhupada writes here at the end of the purport, one need only chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Everyone engaged in the practice of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra will be completely cleansed from the core of his heart, where those papa bijas are hiding, and be saved from the cycle of birth and death. What time is it now? Oh, it's 9 o'clock? You should have said something. So we're completely over time now. So we have to stop. So my seminar will start at 10:30. Right now there's prasadam. At this very instant, 9 o'clock. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.